This presentation is called Top 10 Turf Weeds. I'm Maggie Reiter, University of Minnesota Extension educator for turfgrass. I'd like to start by reminding everybody why we control weeds. I think this is something we've forgotten or that has faded in recent history, the damage that weed problems can do, especially with localities interested in removing herbicides or treating their landscapes with less herbicides than in the past. It's not as simple as taking away herbicides. That's not a weed management program. In these landscapes, we need to still control the weeds, whether it be with lower risk herbicides or with alternative strategies. And the reason is, weeds can compete with desirable turfgrass plants. They can reduce the functions of turfgrass surfaces, especially sports fields or recreational areas. They can reduce the aesthetics of turf lawns. They can hinder visibility in transportation right-of-ways or along roadsides. They can impact human health with allergens and promote other pests like rodents. Something else we don't prioritize is understanding weed biology. Weeds are not just broadleaves, crabgrass, nutsedge. It's important to know what species you have and how that weed grows. It's like keep your friends close, keep your enemies closer. Some ideal characteristics of weed biology that make them so successful at being weeds are listed here. On this list, you'll see things like non-specialized germination requirements that are fulfilled in many environments, rapid seedling growth and fast reproduction, continuous seed production throughout the whole growing season, no pollinators required to set seed, prolific seed production, seed dispersal mechanisms like wind or on animals, brittle plant parts that can't be removed from the ground easily. And the last thing there is their ability to compete with other plants, including our turf grasses, and take over. Today, we're going to talk about the top 10 weeds in turf areas. And I picked these top 10 based off of a survey that we did in 2016 of home lawn vegetation. We looked at about 60 lawns and we took counts of what plants were growing, what weeds were there, what grasses. The sampling area was mostly suburban lawns in the Twin Cities region that had irrigation systems. So these are the top weeds. We got, dandelion, yellowwood sorrel, clover. This is the frequency that they occurred in these different lawns. I've highlighted the top 10 here that we're going to talk about, but you can see there's more beyond this, like some of the nutsedges, and there's a few along the bottom caption also that occurred in 2 or less locations. So we'll flip through these top 10 today. I'll spend a couple minutes on each weed, one slide on identification, talk about cultural control and IPM, and then a slide on herbicides. We're going to discuss IPM approaches, and you'll notice that some weeds, they can be controlled with similar strategies like raising your mowing heights, using a broad spectrum broadleaf herbicide. We'll also look for ways, to be more efficient, right? And strategies like this, like raising the mowing heights, they can help us address several weeds and improve our turfgrass health all in one action. The number one weed found in over half of the lawns that we surveyed is dandelion. So dandelion is a perennial broadleaf plant. It's identified by having leaves that have these sort of wavy edges or toothed appearance. The yellow flowers turn into a globe, a grayish white seed head. Dandelion spreads by these seeds, and the seed head produces hundreds of seeds. I think most of us know dandelion, but it can be confused with sow thistle sometimes. I'll start with the non-chemical control or non-herbicide control options. For dandelion, basically pulling it by hand. When you're doing this, you got to make sure that you dig up the whole taproot, right? Several inches of taproot have to be removed to minimize this chance of regrowth. This picture shows a dandelion with a taproot that's over 1 foot long. Again, you need to make sure that you remove the first few inches of this root. Don't just break off the plant at the soil surface or it could come back. For herbicides, your best bet is to use a product that contains 2,4-D in the fall, whether it be an amine or an ester formulation of 2,4-D. There's literally over 60 herbicides that have 2,4-D in them, so I'm not going to talk about them by name. The next best bet is to use 2,4-D, dicamba, MCPA, triclopyr in the springtime. The optimal spring timing of 2,4-D depends on the formulation. So in the early springtime, the ester formulations are more effective in the cooler early spring temperatures. We have growing degree day models that have been designed to tell us when this is. So here's a table that shows when growing degree days get to 110 to 150 range, that is the early springtime range to use that ester formulation. And historically in Minneapolis, this is May 14th to 18th. As we continue to accumulate more growing degree days, when we get to the 150 to 200 growing degree day range, either formulation of 2,4-D works. And this is historically May 18th to May 23rd. So it's only a handful of days at both of these times. And once we keep going, we get past 200 growing degree days, the amine formulations are going to be more effective at controlling dandelion, and they're going to be safer for non-target plants. And historically, this is May 23rd and on into mid-June. Now, these are historical averages, right? And we know that every May in Minnesota is always abnormal. So it's important to track your local growing degree days in real time of each year. And if you need to spray dandelions really early, like in April or that first week of May, we suggest using fluorosolam, or that's Defender. It's more effective at those very cool early spring temperatures. And then finally, there's a natural herbicide for dandelions and other broadleaf weeds. It's called FEHEDTA, or iron chelate. It's chelated iron. This active ingredient is found in several products, but the most popular trade name is Fiesta. It's not organic, but it is recognized as a natural or biologically based herbicide, and it's accepted as being a lower risk product compared to conventional herbicides. The next weed up is yellow wood sorrel, or oxalis. It's identified with heart-shaped leaves in threes, has small yellow flowers, and it spreads by seeds that are shot out of seed pods. The seeds are in a capsule that sort of explodes to shoot the seeds and disperse them in the local area. Here's an image showing those seed pods. That, again, they explode and release the seed. For non-chemical control of yellow wood sorrel, there's no special tricks. Try to remove the weeds before they start flowering and set seeds. Of course, we always say have a healthy lawn that prevents weeds from arriving in the first place. And that's a backbone of IPM. This weed is shade tolerant. So if you struggle with it in a shady area, consider using grasses that are more adapted to shade environments, like fine fescues that can maintain better turf density in a shady area. The most effective herbicides for yellow wood sorrel contain fluoxapyr and triclopyr. There's a good bunch of probably, a dozen herbicide products that contain these active ingredients, but these are the most effective ones. Moving on to number 3, white clover. And this is the first weed so far where I'll say, I challenge you to consider your expectations. And is some clover okay to have? Some turf managers look at white clover as beneficial because it's a legume. It can fix nitrogen. It mixes really well with grasses, like you can see in the picture on the right, and it can support pollinators with flowers. The leaves of white clover are in threes again, but they are not heart-shaped. So the last one we just showed, yellow wood sorrel, has heart-shaped leaves. White clover does not. Flowers of white clover are white, and they can kind of turn pinkish as they age. And often white clover has this watermark on leaves that you can see in the left picture, but it's not always the case. White clover is an indicator weed of low nitrogen systems. So a way to culturally control white clover is to maintain adequate nitrogen levels with regular fertilizer inputs. This picture shows a field with plots getting various levels of fertilizer. I outlined the untreated control plot that hasn't received nitrogen for 6 years. So you can clearly see there's a much higher white clover pressure in that plot that doesn't get any fertilizer compared to adjacent plots that get fertilizer. Looking at the herbicides for white clover, I want to mention first what not to do. So 2,4-D is not really effective, not a good choice. And also springtime herbicide applications of anything are often ineffective or not great. Fall is a tremendously better time to control this weed. The best options are fall applications of herbicides that contain the following: clopyralid, that would be Lawntrel; dicamba, that's found in many products; fluoxapyr, That's in a bunch of products like Vista, Fluorosalam. It's in Defender. We mentioned that one already. Metasulfuron, again, in several products, and quinclorac, which again is in several products, including Drive. Next up is crabgrass. It's not the most popular weed from our surveys, but it's a really bad one to have. It's an annual plant that dies in the late winter, in the late fall or winter after frost every year. So when it dies every winter, it can leave large patches of bare soil in the springtime. And it's not good to have open soil in lawns because it can contribute to runoff and pollution. Crabgrass is identified with bright green leaves. The leaves are a little bit wider than most of our turfgrass leaves. And it has this, like I said, a bright green, sort of like a lime green color. If it's in a seed producing growth phase, the seed head looks like this picture on the right. It has 3 to 5 spikes or fingers. There's 2 species of crabgrass in Minnesota. There's 2 scientific names up top. And I think the easiest way to tell the 2 apart is smooth crabgrass has little to no hair on its leaves, but it might have some. Whereas large crabgrass, that's the second species, large crabgrass has very hairy leaves. The best non-chemical control of crabgrass is raising the height of cut. And this is something that's been proven again and again in research settings and in practice. This picture shows a turf area that has a crabgrass infestation. Crabgrass is this sort of lime green, highlighter green color that's all along the left and sort of the back end of this image. And the crabgrass is all in a section of the field that's mowed at 2 inches. The arrow is pointing to an area of the field that's mowed at 3 inches, and you can see there's no crabgrass. That bright lime green grass is not in there. So just raising the height of cut by 1 inch to 3 inches reduces the crabgrass pressure. I'll spend the most of any weed here probably talking about herbicides for crabgrass. So there's both pre-emergent and post-emergent herbicides. And we'll begin with the pre-emergent herbicides. They are very effective when they're used at the right time. So this is a picture of a pre-emergent herbicide trial for crabgrass control. The bright green grass, again, these strips and these sort of border areas, that's all crabgrass. This is all crabgrass. The darker colored strips here, those are the research plots that had received pre-emergent herbicide treatments. You can see there's no crabgrass in those plots, and there's more desirable turfgrass color. As far as your herbicide options, I have them listed on the left here. So dimension, dithiopyr, pendulum or pendimethalin, and barricade or prodiamine, those are the best for cool season turfgrass areas. Then the 2 below it, those are older chemistries. They're not as effective, but they certainly can provide control. Now let's talk about what if you didn't apply a pre-emergent, or you applied a pre-emergent and you still got some breakthrough crabgrass. You need to control crabgrass in its post-emergent phase now. So to make decisions about what herbicides to use, you need to know the size or the growth stage of the crabgrass that's present. And the labels of all these products, they contain notes that describe how well they work on certain sizes of crabgrass. Now, generally speaking, smaller crabgrass is much easier to control than larger plants. So here's a table of your options. There's 4 of them. And again, their efficacy is sort of described by the growth stage. So if the crabgrass weed is at the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 leaf stage, dimension or dithiopyr is a product that works, and you're supposed to apply it before tillering. Then if we go into the 2, 3, 4, 5 or more tillering stage, we can see like the next one down here, mesotrione or tenacity and other products. You can apply that to grasses before the 4 tiller stage, but efficacy is reduced as the plant size increases. The next one down there, quinclorac, that's found in Drive and other products. The growth stage for optimum control is through the leaf stages up to 1 tiller. And then interestingly, applications at the 2 to 4 tiller stage may not provide complete control. We don't really understand why this is, but it is very well documented. And then quinclorac or Drive will start working again at when the crabgrass is at a 5 tiller stage or larger. And the bottom one there, that's a new new herbicide on the market, Tepremazone or Pilex, and it says to use higher rates on crabgrass that are larger than 1 tiller. Another thing I should notice is dithiopyr dimension. That has, you'll see it has both pre and post-emergent activity. It was on the last slide with the pre-emergence, and it's on this side with the post-emergence. So it has a lot of utility, and it can be used at many different stages throughout the springtime. But this sums up the crabgrass control. Next up is Creeping Charlie. This is the most asked about weed from the general public or residents that do their own lawn care. So Creeping Charlie is also called ground ivy. It's recognized by its kidney-shaped leaves that have rounded teeth on the edges. It has square stems. That's because it's in the mint family. And it has an odor when it's mowed or cut. Creeping Charlie spreads by stolons or above ground stems. It's easy to see it creeping across a soil surface, or when you pull it up, you can pull up a long runner or a stolon. It has purple flowers. It's consistently a problem weed, although some people have come to tolerate it because it attracts pollinators. But I have to say it's a weak supporter of pollinators, but it's better than nothing. Creeping Charlie likes moist moist and shady areas. So make sure that you're not overwatering if you have irrigation, or do what you can to improve drainage and light levels. Use shade tolerant grasses in shady areas like fine fescues or tall fescues. Again, they'll maintain a more dense lawn compared to something like Kentucky bluegrass, which is not as shade tolerant. If your lawn is over 50% Creeping Charlie, I say to get rid of it all and reseed or sod your lawn. In that case, you can, use use a non-selective product like glyphosate or a natural organic burn down herbicide to, again, kill everything and reseed or sod desirable grass. Herbicides that control Creeping Charlie are listed here. Again, best, good, and a natural option. The best is using anything that has triclopyr in it, and in the fall time is the best time. A good option would be to use products containing 2,4-D or dicamba. And then that natural alternative is the iron chelator, FEHEDTA again. So the conventional herbicides will probably take 2 or 3 applications. The natural herbicides like the chelated iron, or again, Fiesta is the trade name, that might take even more applications, 3-4 applications to get adequate control. Okay, we're halfway through our weeds here, and we'll move a bit faster because there's some repeating information. So let's talk about quackgrass. It looks like this in a lawn, this picture on the left. So it grows faster, and it will grow kind of above the turfgrass canopy. It has wider leaves than most of our turf grasses. It spreads by rhizome or underground stems, so it can spread out in sort of a patch from just a few rhizomes or a few plants. The leaves have a ruled vernation, but the big key to identifying this is the clasping auricle, which is in the picture there on the right. This makes it different from tall fescue or orchard grass. It's commonly confused with tall fescue and orchard grass, but if the auricle is clasping or crossing sort of, that is a good alert that it is quackgrass. As far as non-chemical controls, I hate to say it, but beyond maintaining a healthy turf, really nothing. You would have to manually remove it with a shovel. And I say that because you need to get the rhizomes that are deep and spread out. If you even leave a little piece of quackgrass in your lawn, it can come back. This is a picture of Dallas grass that's been dug out, but it's a similar idea with quackgrass, that you would have to dig it out like this, and you'd have to dig out about 4 to 6 inches of the soil. Any herbicide is going to be more effective when quackgrass plants are young and actively growing. And also note that herbicides are not as effective if the quackgrass is under drought stress. So it's not actively growing and it's not taking up the herbicides. Quackgrass can be killed with non-selective products like glyphosate, but again, that's going to kill anything that it touches. So you will have to repair the grass around it. As far as selective herbicides, control is really poor to fair. Your options would be fluazepop or fusilade or cethoxidime. also known as segment. And you have to check the labels of these for the safety on your cool season turf grass. But, you know, when I talk to turf managers who have tried this for controlling quackgrass, they say it does not really work. The seventh weed is black medic. The leaves of this one are in threes again, just like white clover and yellow wood sorrel. But with black medic, the middle leaf has a longer stem. You can see it right there. That middle leaf has a longer stem. Black medic also has the yellow flowers that are pictured here. And, you know, tying back to some of the lookalikes that we mentioned, oxalis or yellow wood sorrel, it has heart-shaped leaves, whereas black medic does not. And then white clover has white flowers instead of yellow flowers. And white clover doesn't have this long stem on the middle leaf, like in the picture on the upper right. Just like clovers, as far as non-chemical control, black medic is an indicator weed of low nitrogen. So maintain adequate nitrogen levels, or, you know, provide regular fertilizer applications. And then again, just like clover, just like dandelion, broadleaf herbicides in general will work on black medic. And again, see, I'm picking up the pace here because the control options are starting to repeat for similar weeds. We'll round the corner here to the final stretch, and the next one up is rough bluegrass, or Poa trivialis. It's a perennial grass. It makes these very bright green patches, and it spreads by stolons. Some people think it looks, or it does look a lot like bentgrass, and it can be confused with bentgrass in a lawn area. To tell them apart, you have to get pretty close and look at the leaf tips. This is what I do. Bentgrass has a pointy leaf tip, like you can see on the left side, whereas rough bluegrass, it's a POA. So just like annual bluegrass or Kentucky bluegrass, it has a boat-shaped leaf tip. When we surveyed those lawns to measure the weed or the grass cover, we found a handful of lawns that had 40, 50% rough bluegrass. And these were all lawns with irrigation systems that were operating at high frequencies, like every other day. So the lawns were getting excessive water, and rough bluegrass is a signal weed of overwatering. And, you know, it's considered a weed because it's very heat and drought tolerant. It's considered a weed because it's very heat and drought intolerant. The patches will turn brown in the summertime. So if you have a few patches, you can dig them up. But we also suggest raising mowing heights. And again, do not overwater. On the other hand, though, rough bluegrass does well in wet, shady areas. And here's images of a rough bluegrass lawn. I mean, this was planted on purpose. So this is a very wet, shady area in a backyard near a lake. It's mowed twice a year, gets one fertilizer application, and it looks great. So rough bluegrass can make a good lawn in this specific microclimate of a really wet and shady area. Non-selected products like glyphosate will kill the whole patch of this, and then, you know, it's probably going to injure your good turf grass around it. So you're going to have to go back and reseed or resod those areas. And this is best done in the springtime. Velocity is a product that's registered for golf course fairways, but it ceased production in 2017. So availability is probably not little to nothing. Cefoxidime or segment can work, but it is not safe on all cool season grasses. And this picture shows an image of rough bluegrass when it gets drought stressed in the summertime. Again, it turns brown or off color. Broadleaf plantain is recognized for big oval leaves, sort of a rosette growth form. Some say the weeds appear waxy, and then also on the right side you can see the flower stalks. Those have a very distinct look to them. Again, broadleaf plantain is found in irrigated or wetter areas, so don't overwater. And then in the herbicide portfolio, 2,4-D is a great choice. And a pro tip is that quinclorac or drive is not effective on broadleaf plantain. The last weed is prostrate spurge. It has small green leaves that often have sort of a red mark on them that you can see on the picture on the right. The best identification characteristic is that it has milky sap in the stems when the stems are broken. So spurge can get confused with knotweed, but look for this milky sap. That's the giveaway that the weed that you have is spurge. Spurge does well in dry or in drought-prone areas, often sandy soils. So I've been saying for many weeds, don't overwater, improve your drainage, that kind of thing. But spurge actually does better in dry areas. So if you have a lot of this weed, I suggest making sure that you're watering enough or watering appropriately. We'll often see it like in the picture here, growing right in a mulch layer, right? The mulch is probably very dry. It's growing in the mulch rather than in the soil. Broadleaf herbicides in general, products containing sulfentrazone, carfentrazone, 2,4-D, and triclopyr. And it will probably take 2 to 3 applications of this due to continuous germination. Spurge just germinates all season long. So here's a recap of what we covered. Top 10 turf weeds. We had some summer annuals here, a few perennials here, and then more broadleaves and 3 grassy weeds. All these weeds have different life cycles. They have different biology, so they have to be treated differently. So, please remember this as you're planning your weed control programs and selecting herbicides. As far as or the last note I want to leave you with is some references and additional resources. So the one on the left here, this is a book. It's called Turfgrass Weed Control for Professionals. There's a edition that comes out every year, and 2021 edition should be the most recent one out. It's a very good guide. It has a lot of information about all the herbicides. The book is made with input from people across the North Central region and the Upper Midwest, including the University of Minnesota. But it's from Purdue, so you can buy it on their website there. And then on the right, all the information in that book, all those like helpful tables about herbicides and their efficacies, it's available for free online at this website through the University of Wisconsin. Go to this website, and if you click on the turf weeds, you can go into this web application, and it allows you to search for different weeds. And so you can see all the ways that you can control that weed. Thank you for listening. Here is, our contact information. Follow us on Twitter and our turfgrass science websites at turf.umn.edu.